Okay, for this video we're going to be finishing up the vessel, and there's several things we need here. One is a bucket of water, which will clean our vessel in. Of course, we need our vessel and our topper that the previous video showed how to make. A little cork. This cork, I believe, is a size 00 cork. It's a 1/2 inch long cork, and I think it goes from 5/8 down to 3/8 inch, I believe is the size, or about there, which we have to cut and fit into the vessel so that it fits nice and snug and perfectly aligned. I use an emery board, or you can use fine sandpaper. I have an X-Acto, my bead reamer, 2-part Gorilla Glue, epoxy, any kind of epoxy will work, and a paper plate with a toothpick. So those are all the things we need, and let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is clean the vessel. And we have all that bee release on there from the blow tube, so we need to get it wet, because you don't want this bead release blowing up in the air around you, because it could cause lung issues if you breathe it in. So we have wet bead release, and I have a little battery operated reamer. I think I got on Amazon. They're really affordable, like $15. And you just want to go around the inside of that lip, constantly getting out the dirty water until it's fully cleaned. You'll see the gray part come off first, but then after that, sometimes you're left with some, white specks of bead release that really is tough and it doesn't want to come out. And so I try to look at the outside, from the outside in, and make sure you get all the areas cleaned up, so there's no marks left, except for it'll look smooth, whitish, semi-transparent when you're done. And so rinse it off, and then we have to let it dry for when we do the cork. Okay, now that we have our vessel is dry, and you can see there's a little film there from from the bead release being attached to it when you made it, and also your reamer. It almost looks like it's an etched. It has a hazy white look to it, but that's easily remedied by putting on some nail polish or some kind of lacquer. But nail polish works fine, and I'm not going to do it right now, but that's just a little hint to actually get transparent glass in any hue or tone or clear, to get that haze away. And it's really great for doing inside beads too. But what we want to do now is measure our cork. Now our cork is like a little too big, and so what you want to do is you want to fit it in. You want to push it down as snugly as you can. And if you wanted to have your vessel just like this, you can leave it like this and not have a topper. But we make toppers for ours, or I make toppers for mine anyway. And so I want to measure and cut this cork to size. So I'm just going to use my fingernail and mark it like about 1 millimeter or so above the top of the cork neck to get a good measurement. And then I'll take it back out, put that aside, and I will cut with my X-Acto right on my line that I made. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. You got a little wiggle room because you went a little bit above, so that's okay. And so now it's a little rough and it's a little crooked. That's where our emery board or sandpaper comes into play. And so you could just run your topper along it to get it fairly evened out. It doesn't have to be perfect, because this is going to go against your topper, and if there's a little bit of variance in it, it'll just help the epoxy stick better. So what we want to do now is we want to line up your topper with your cork so it's centered. So you want to look at it, just press your little nub that we had on there Press that against your cork just to hold it, and turn your topper back and forth and try to center it up so your cork looks centered with the bottom. And when it is, you want to push it together to leave a little indent to mark where that little spot is. And so as you can see, there's a little indent in my cork. And I am going to use my little X-Acto to dig out a little hole around the indent. And this hole will hold extra epoxy, and it will help center your piece too, because that indent's there and it'll be stuck in the hole. So that'll help keep your piece, your cork centered. And it'll also give it a little more tooth because of the extra epoxy and your little nub. It'll give it a little more tooth to the hold, to the actual. Okay, and so then we'll just remeasure, and you could twist it around your cork around a little bit to make sure it's, and it looks pretty centered there. And we're ready to glue. But first, this glass is all smooth from torching it, and we need to roughen it up. The more rough, the more scratched up it is, the better the glue will hold to it, because having the nice shiny smooth glass, it might hold at first, but the glue can eventually pull away from the smooth surface. So you want to kind of scratch it up and give a good tooth to the glass. So I just go around with my reamer, again it's dampened, go around and like ream and get this kind of rough all the way around, and that little nub too, all around, and the little nub on the top. I get that all kind of scratched up, see that? And then I usually take it just with my hand and try to make some extra kind of scratches in it that are a little deeper. Just any scratches will help, it doesn't matter, just about the size of the cork. Okay, and then we want to clean that off a little bit and wipe it off with a towel. And now we got to let that dry, and we're ready to do the gluing. Okay, so now it's time to attach the cork to your topper. So I have my paper plate. I've noticed that by accident a couple of times I tried on like kind of just wimpy plastic plates, and sometimes the epoxy will like eat right through it. So you put equal parts of the epoxy on your plate. Attach this back. And I mix it really well. I had a little bit too much of this stuff. Mix it really well, and it kind of stinks. So you want to make sure you get it really well mixed. Okay, and when it's kind of sticky and mixed, you want to make sure you get it into that little hole that you made, and make just a thin coating on the top of your cork. Doesn't have to be that much. And a thin coating around your topper. Squish the two together. Make sure it's all lined up and centered. You can just remove the rest with excess with your fingers or a damp paper towel or something. And you have to hold it. You have to hold it for a few minutes until it stiffens up. This takes 24 hours to cure. I know other people really like the E6000 glue, but I think the two-part epoxy works best for me. I've used both, and both are good, but I tend to use the epoxy, the two-part epoxy. It seems to work better for me. So you just have to hold these until the cork is not pulling away from your glass. once you hold it on there. And then you just need to let it cure. So I would say at least 12 hours or even overnight, because it takes 24 hours to fully cure. And you don't want this to, you know, come apart when you're trying to fit it in your vessel for the final time, the final fitting and the final grinding of the cork. So it looks like it's staying and it's centered. And so we'll just let it sit and cure, and we'll be back. Okay, well, it's nighttime now, and I had to move where I was filming so that I had enough light, because I was using sunlight earlier. But the last step is fitting the cork, the final fit. So I already know that this is a little too long. It's going to stick down into the vessel longer than I want, so I will trim that. But let's see how well it fits on the cork. So you want to kind of squish it in. And it is a little, there's a millimeter or two sticking out. And so I want to file this all down so it'll fit nicely. So I'm going to trim off the bottom first. Make it a little bit shorter. And it's a little crooked, but that's okay. We'll file it straight. So we will file it straight. We'll see how it fits then, because sometimes it'll fit down better because this bottom will hit a plateau that it doesn't want to go past, but it will go down further after it's trimmed off. So we will see. So I'll just file that smooth. You want it nice and smooth for your final cork. And let's see how well this works now. We'll try it again. It might still not fit all the way. Yeah, it still doesn't fit all the way down. I didn't think so. So what's great about these little emery boards versus sandpaper is they're nice and stiff, so you can just sand around the edges and get your cork so it'll fit very nicely by just trimming a little bit of the edge. And I'm trimming mostly the top edge because that's the wider edge, and not really down here so much, but up towards the top where I know it's wider, and that's what's keeping it from going in. So you just file it up around and do a little bit at a time, and then check it, see if it fits better until you can get it all the way down. You want a snug fit, but you want it to be to go all the way down so that the glass meets the glass. So the top of the glass meets the glass from the vessel. So it's totally closed with no gap of cork showing. And I still, if you noticed, I still haven't put the clear nail polish in here. Which I can do just to show you how much clearer it comes out. But I could show you that too. And that's great for, like, if you're doing beads and you clean your beads and you notice you have that like white, kind of like etched look to it after cleaning them out. It happens a lot with transparent beads. You know, you really don't have that problem with opaque at all, but for transparent and you want it to be nice and clear, putting a little bit of nail polish on really helps clear them up and look transparent again. So let's see how this fits. I trimmed it a little bit, sanded it a little bit, and it's almost there. It's further down. So I think I gotta do a little bit more. So just sand all the way around evenly. Sometimes you might notice, like if you were really pushing on your cork, sometimes your cork can go crooked just because you were smushing it so hard together. You don't really have to smush it hard together when you're holding the epoxy on to dry, but sometimes that can happen. Your cork could go a little crooked, but you'll notice that one side sticks out more than the other. But in most cases it's pretty symmetrical. Still trying to file this down nice and smooth so it looks nice. So the bottom of the cork looks nice. Let's see how this is. Oh, there we go. It pretty much goes all the way down. There we have it, a finished vessel. Flowers on one side, dolphin on the other, seashell topper, very cute. So I'll just show you this one last thing. I got a little nail polish here, just to show you how different it looks with the nail polish on. And you don't need a lot, so you can wipe off your brush. But if you just put a little nail polish on there, very little around, and you got to let this dry really well. Don't put the cork in right away because it'll get stuck. So you got to really let this dry. But there you go. Now it looks clear like the rest of your glass. And there you have it. And the seashell topper. Thanks for watching.